speed is everything, like absolutely everything. Beyond startups, every great conqueror historically has been fast. Napoleon was great because he was fast. Alexander the Great, same thing. Like they were quick, right? If you want to take your time, if you want to, work your 9 to 5, if you want to take your weekends off, like be my guest, you're gonna lose to people who are gonna work 24/7.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Not a Minimum Viable podcast. Today we're joined by Jay and Anthony, two builders reimagining how we interact with software through AI. Jay comes from the academic AI world, having co-led U of T AI, Canada's largest undergraduate AI association. Anthony has been building and shipping product since his teens, from mobile apps to enterprise software. Together, they're building OpenSesame, backed by world-class advisors like Aiden Gomez from Cohere and support from A16z. They believe we're witnessing the biggest shift in computing interfaces since the GUI was invented in 1973. When they're not building the future of how humans talk to computers, they're hosting hackathons and organizing 5K runs for Toronto's AI community. Welcome, Jay and Anthony.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to meet you guys because I don't think you and I have met before, either of you, but I know you guys know Rudy through the network, but he's been telling me a bit about what you guys have been working on. But I think our guests, like our listeners and both of us, would like to hear from you guys. So if you can start by giving us a brief on what OpenSesame is all about, what you guys are working on, and just give us an outline of things.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the whole premise of the company is that we just fundamentally think that eventually all of your work is going to be done through natural language. And we think that we could be that company that makes that happen for everyone. That's essentially the gist of it. We just thought that there's historical precedent for it. So like you mentioned in the intro, we used to be in a world where everyone had to use like a terminal-like interface. It's quite impractical, very technical. And everyone sort of switched from that to a GUI. Now it's fully democratized. Everyone knows how to interact with different buttons, different menus. But then what's next, right? And then it seems like AI has been changing a lot of how we work, how we think. And we think it's going to have a pretty sizable impact in how we interact with interfaces.
Cool. Interesting story. So from what I know of you guys had been working together on, I guess, separate things initially before coming together. Could you tell us a bit more about that journey that you guys were on?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I was the president at U of T AI. So for that period of time, did computer science at U of T. Had my first startup, which was in a sector that was actually very difficult. It was the education sector. We just built AI agents for teachers. That's as simple as it was. And in that time period, it was building for like a very long time. So it was around like 8 to 9, 10 months where we were just building product, shipping it to teachers, very long sales cycles, very frustrating sales cycles. So during U of T AI, we had this machine learning competition where we invited a few schools. Anthony's friend was on the McGill team, and then that's how I got introduced to him virtually for the first time. So we had chatted for a bit, very hello, hi conversation, just like keeping you in the network. Funny enough, we both applied to Next 36, and that's where we were like, this is a little bit coincidental because we just met, we didn't know we applied. All of a sudden, we were in the same accelerator, and he was working on a healthcare startup at the time.
So actually before Next, I had a company that was selling a bunch of EHR software and researcher management tools, and I managed to sell to the largest hospital network in Quebec, and that was going well for a couple of months. But then, I mean, if you know anything about the Quebec healthcare system, it's quite government controlled, and so they just ended up signing a pretty large government contract with Epic Systems. And so at that point I was like, hey, this is probably not a great vertical to be in anymore. So I pivot out of it, and I still had a year of uni left, so kind of timing made sense. And then when I got to Toronto from Montreal to do Next, and I saw Jay also got in, I was like, whoa,
it's weird.
Weird. Almost meant to be to a certain extent. And so with my background in kind of healthcare and his background in education, we had both experienced a lot of issues relating to AI hallucinations, and that's sort of where OpenSesame just really
Was born.
Yeah.
Was born. So like it started off in that space. Obviously, what you describe, what I have to describe right now is very different because obviously as a founder, you go through a lot of pivots. There's a lot of experiments that you run simultaneously. So I think the product just naturally fit in where it is today. But yeah, it was fun. Like the first time I remember I met Anthony like properly, it was just in a meeting room, and I knew he was I was forced to kind of think of him as like a interesting co-founder because he literally told me like, why are you working on such a boring idea? And I was like, how can you even say that? Because I was like, this guy's working in healthcare, I'm working in education. Like, literally just came out the gate. It was like, why are you working on such a boring idea? I was like, what? And then like the conversation started getting interesting. So I was like, yeah.
I think I used a different word than boring.
Yeah,
but
a little different word.
But I think that's like a key factor that we talk to a lot of founders about is like finding the right fit, not just with your product, but with your co-founders and then eventually with your team. So between the two of you, when does the idea start taking shape as a potential business or product you're building, and it goes beyond your initial curiosities into wanting to make a change in the field?
I guess we were in a non-traditional position because of Next. We were kind of forced to think about everything as a business as like, hey, like if you guys don't succeed in the next 3.5 months in this incubator program, you have to go back to school, you have to go back to your boring 9-to-5 job, like, back to reality. And so that was the X pressure that like, hey, like we have to make it here. And so we looked at each other's backgrounds, like what we did in the past, and we had both shared a lot of experiences dealing with AI hallucinations, and it kind of made sense. The market was ready for that kind of innovation, we thought at least. And so yeah, we just dove head first, and I think we shipped our first MVP in like 6-7 hours, and we just crammed a bunch of work in one meeting room, and then shipped to a bunch of people in the office, got some good feedback, and that's pretty much how it started.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had co-founded Lumos before,
correct.
And Anthony, you were working on different like healthcare software.
Yeah.
How did those early experiences, technical and otherwise, shape your philosophy about building what you're building now?
I mean, for me, I can say like so much so that like my company had very slow iteration cycles, which I didn't like, because as a builder, I think you just consistently want to ship out something new. You want to kind of get an idea. There's like, fast feedback cycles that are coming for your customers. You want to ship out something that they can instantly start using again based on like whatever feedback they give you. Problem with selling to schools at the time were whatever teachers were using it, using it for a bit during the day. We'd get like feedback the week after. It was very slow and there was not much we could do. So it got a bit frustrating. But also I think that it really came down to like, can I sell in this market or be a founder in this market for the next 5 to 6 years? And honestly, I couldn't do that. So that was a predominant issue of why the company didn't go where it was supposed to.
Yeah. Well, one of actually the big things that we learned pretty earlier on, and it's weird to say it out loud because it's kind of obvious, but when you start a business, you have to love who you sell to, right? The thought is that like you're going to be at it for the next, let's say, 5 years. Like if you don't like who you interact with 24/7, you're gonna have a miserable time. And so at least having a plan to get to those people is important, or at least starting with those people is important.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
And you talked a bit initially about Next 36 as well, right? I want to go into that experience a bit more because I get that you have experience building products before and not necessarily things that worked out, and that gives you a certain kind of learning as well going on to your next project. Yeah. But what about accelerator programs or incubator programs like that? What was that experience like for each of you?
I mean, I did a bunch of incubators before. Like I did DMZ in Toronto. Next 36 was naturally after that. But I think it's a great pool of resources if you want like a added network, if you want intros to people that you would probably not get as easy of an intro to as a cold email. So if you want something that's a bit more warm, there's resources of people around you who've probably built startups before that you can ask a lot of questions to. Access to a bunch of investors, you can say that. But I mean, truly it's you get what you give, right? So it's like if you're not pushing as much in the program, if you're not actually putting an immense amount of pressure on yourself, I don't think it's really that valuable, to be honest. And I don't know if you agree with me on that, but yeah.
No, absolutely. I think another thing that's probably underrated about all these incubator programs and accelerators is that like you're essentially interacting with other founders 24/7, which is like unusual, right? Normally, if you're isolated as a team, it gets kind of tough sometimes. Like it's kind of lonely sometimes because, hey, who do you talk to if you have any issues? Now you're with all these other founders who are likely to be facing similar issues to you. Okay, it's not as lonely now.
Yeah, that's true.
So both of you guys, I guess, had this incredible trajectory, both through various incubator programs, through your previous startups, through university. Through all of that, have there been any key moments that have shaped your thinking about AI's potential, given that, like, you're working in a company that's making a bet in a way on the future of AI?
It's a hard question. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because, so I was born in Montreal, and city's great. It has its pros and cons. But I was kind of lucky to be born at a time where I was young enough to be able to attend, early lectures from Yoshua Bengio and a lot of other like pioneers in like modern AI, and that kind of opened my eyes to like, hey, this is, there's real potential here. Like this could be huge. So getting exposed to that at a young age definitely like influenced me, turning me into who I am today. I think beyond that, I mean, obviously the ChatGPT moment was like huge for everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, getting exposed to entrepreneurship in general, like, it changes the way you think. Yeah, probably tell more about that.
I mean, like, weirdly enough, I think where the product is today, it was a lot of like actually going very deep down into like how people use products fundamentally as a whole. Like if this could be your grandmom, your mom, your dad, I mean, it's just a very seamless experience, and that's I think what we were trying to look at in terms of like how interfaces are shaped, how they look. And I think future-wise interfaces are getting much smaller. Much smaller. I think they're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where in the next 5-10 years we don't really have apps that are built off something. It'll probably just be governed by like the company's APIs. So that's also like very interesting thought-wise, because you have all these interfaces like Bolt or Lovable, which are guiding a lot of the decisions on like where product is going as well. So it's interesting to think about.
And then one thing that I think Rudy phrased it in his question was making a bet on where the industry is going or where the technology is going. But a big aspect when we talk to founders is storytelling. Like getting that business built is how do you tell that story? How good are you at selling your idea and the vision that you have, right? Yeah. When did that aspect start coming in for you guys, and how did you traverse that sort of? How did you tell that story to each other? I'm just wondering how it came out.
It's more concrete now than what was before.
Yeah. Like if you're expecting to have a solid story from day one, like no, absolutely not. I think something you have to iterate on, every week, every day, as you improve on the product, as you see the possibilities of, if we add this functionality, maybe we can do that in the future. We can serve this market and stuff like that. I think a really important thing that we did earlier on was actually like write down like a company manifesto. Just like really, I think pitch decks are good for certain things. They're quite short form. They don't actually get deep down into like how you think as a company and what your goals are. And so for us, when we had, we used the manifesto as like a long form type of thing where, we explained every part of our decision making process, where we thought the industry was going to go. It really helped us like dial it down. Like, oh, we're not building this little like chatbot thing. We're building for the future of user interfaces. So yeah, that's been hugely helpful for us, just guiding the product and its vision.
I think also like what really stood out between the process of how we evaluated each product decision was that Anthony came up with like 6 criteria, which fundamentally guides any decision we made about product. And it still does, because that fits within the manifesto, fits within the thesis of what we have for the company going forward. And also like where our product is today, which is right now this embeddable AI coworker that sits in the bottom middle of your product. It basically enables the end user to control the entire SaaS product using natural language. Where does that go in the next like 2 to 3 years? Right now it's like stagnant, it's one thing. Where does it evolve? So I think those decisions are also guided by. that criteria.
And it's funny because I think we were kind of forced to write down a manifesto or like a guideline type of thing where just because we had wasted so much time overbuilding, I think we probably wasted like 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Like, look, the whole team is like, we're all developers, we're all builders, we love building stuff, I guess for the fun of it. And so you kind of get distracted oftentimes in like just overbuilding. If your customers aren't asking for it, then like, why are you building it? And even like if your customers are asking for it, sometimes you have to think like, hey, is this in the best interest of the company? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because right now, like our main wedge to the market, the broader market, was selling to these underlying like legacy incumbents. So like management software companies that are in like construction tech or insurance tech, fleet logistics management software, where the customer-facing data is very, very complex. And our product basically gives them that wedge to make their users more productive, but also improve the overall UX of the platform very quickly. So that like AI native interface for their product was very like, oh, okay, this is like something we can offer their customers. We can upsell it, add it as like an ancillary source of revenue. But obviously, when you sell to a company like that, they also have external requests like, hey, can you do this or that or this? But does it fit within the product scope in the next like 2 years? Then you probably guide that decision of if we need it or not.
That makes sense. One thing you mentioned was when you were trying to come up with this idea of Cell, which is the thing you're building, you really tried to understand and dive deep into the problems of users, right?
Yeah.
To understand it from first principles. Were there any key insights you picked up that now in hindsight seem obvious that were not obvious back then?
I think messaging is actually like quite important. Like earlier on when we deployed Cell on a customer's product, we used like a normal like for the placeholder input text, it was like how can I help you or whatever. Just those words made it seem like it was a support chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
Like
also placement.
Placement also was a huge thing. So so those two things. Placement originally was like every other chatbot, bottom right. And so weirdly enough, like a huge part of the companies is there's a lot of like psychology that's involved where like, hey, everyone kind of knows now that bottom right corner is for support. Okay, well, what could be associated with like the bottom middle? Well, middle typically is like there's a lot of, well, that's where the action's at. That's where all the content is at. So it would make sense to have some kind of action bar in the middle with different kind of messaging. So instead of saying, hey, how can I help you? It's like, hey,
what can I do for you?
What can I do for you? Ask me to do this, ask me to do that, things like that.
I think in terms of how your product interacts with your users is very important, because a lot of times, even in courses at university, would be talking about removing the sludge, essentially.
Yeah.
In behavioral economics, it's like a major portion of how can you make life easier for your users by forcing them essentially to interact with your product.
Yeah.
I think I love the fact that you guys identified that the chatbot sits in the bottom right corner, and that it's like inherently giving off that vibe essentially to your user. And all of a sudden now it's like front and center in their field of vision every time they're reading through a document or something of the sort. So I think it's a cool pivot. But to make that change, when you're making decisions like that, what is your decision-making process usually like? Do you have like a conflict resolution, system in place, or do you usually tend to agree on things like that? How does it usually come about?
I think we typically tend to agree on a lot of these design decisions. The way we're processing things now is Jay does a lot more of the sales than I do. And so when he talks to customers, he's able to identify like what their needs are, what they might be interested in, and stuff like that. And so he takes those things, tells me all of that stuff, and I filter them down to, hey, like what are the actionable items here? And then from there, like, I'm more into like the product stuff, so I try to make decisions that way. A large part is actually like looking at historical precedents. Like, are there other companies that are doing something similar? Historically speaking, what does middle compared to right side mean psychologically? So all these things all obviously are taken into account.
I think also like asking the user directly if they wanted to kind of have it within the middle of the screen, because I think we're working on a lot of flexibility where Cell can be moved around the screen. So it can be like flung to the sidebar of the screen, or it can be pushed to the middle or the top, where you can move it around, but the resting position is always the bottom middle. So you know it's always there when you need it that way. So that's where we positioned it to start with.
Quick pivot. I want to ask you about this one thing I saw on your LinkedIn. In a post you put out a couple of weeks or months ago, you mentioned sending a stealth spy to your investor's wedding before finalizing the term sheet. What's that story? Like, please spill the tea.
Our first investor was Comma Capital. So they're based out of New York City. It's David and Adarsh, like really, really cracked guys. They're very in the realm of going as early as possible for founders, which we really liked. Basically, at the time I was running UFT AI, David was in Toronto, or he was coming to Toronto, and I got like a cold LinkedIn DM from him saying that, hey, like saw this post, this is pretty cool, like just would love to chat. For the first 3 days I ignored it, so I didn't think much of it because it was just a random connection. And then when Anthony and I were working more on OpenSesame, we were just looking and I saw this guy's bio. It was like, oh, okay, investor at Comma Capital. I was like, might as well just take the chat and get some feedback on what we're doing. So we had a call, kind of hit it off pretty quickly. And then he's like, oh, I'll be in Toronto for a friend's wedding. So I was like, okay, cool. He was in Toronto, and then it's really weird. So this is where, it was kind of meant to be, or in a very small world, because my girlfriend's sister's fiance, right?
Wow, yeah.
So my girlfriend's sister's fiance, he is a private equity person, so he's in private equity. He had a friend, which is his best friend, who was also attending that wedding. And David and him were on the same table.
Okay.
So I had just asked him, oh, do you know this guy? I'm not sure. And then he said, oh, one of my friends who's also in town for this wedding, because I said he's going for a wedding, is he probably will know him. I'll ask him. And then he said, oh yeah, I've known David for 8 years, and we're sitting at the same table. So that's when I was like, okay, just ask as many questions as possible to figure out if this guy is legit, and then get back to me. So that was kind of the stealth spy thing that we did.
I mean, the same way that VCs are going to do due diligence on startups.
Yeah,
startups have to do the same due diligence to VCs.
Yeah.
So Comma Capital is NYC, correct?
So they're based in New York.
Yeah. And I noticed from your manifesto that you also have other advisors like Aiden Gomez, you're backed by A16z, which is US based.
Correct.
How does, Toronto's access to talent, capital, investor network, VC compare to the US from your experience?
So let's separate that question into different segments. So talent was amazing talent. I think the talent that's coming out of Waterloo, especially, UF2 as well, McGill to a certain extent, very good. Very Waterloo. I mean, I think a huge proportion of cracked engineers in Silicon Valley they're from Waterloo, right?
I saw that tweet where it's YC Startup School just felt like another Waterloo seminar or some shit.
Yeah,
I brought that up. I brought that up at a Toronto Tech Week event, and some guy just flamed me for being on Twitter all the time for that.
It's absolutely it's remarkable what they've been able to do at Waterloo. In terms of capital, you can't really compare it to the States. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest here. You just can't. You want to
risk as well, right? Risk is a big portion of what governs the investment thesis, especially very early on.
So I think it's all connected, right? A lot of these VC firms in Canada, they have to be more risk averse. Their due diligence cycles are a lot longer just because they don't have access to that much money. They just don't have enough. They don't have as much money to deploy as these US firms, and so they're forced to be a lot more risk averse. But yeah, if you're a startup that wants to raise capital pretty quickly, and a decent, at a decent valuation, decent amount of money, it's hard to say no to US capital.
Mm-hmm. I still think you can govern this is something I took very kind of closely from Vin's talk at Tech Week, where Waterloo was kind of engineered to have the connection network, and no other place would be engineered to have that same network effect because of where the plaza is, how close it is to the campus, where the students are roaming around after school. That was interesting in the same way where you can meet some great angels around this area. Where Toronto is also centered that way, where you have the capability to walk in a coffee shop, meet someone probably, or walk in 535 or somewhere where you see a lot of value in working, let's say new, and just meet someone that could potentially be like an amazing angel. So that kind of effect is also still there, but obviously you would argue SF is much better, which it is.
But that's the thing, like in Toronto is like you have these pockets of places, like 535, great, new is great. The thing is, San Francisco is like literally like everywhere is like that.
Yeah.
Or you grab coffee at like a Blue Bottle, everyone you talk to could be like, I don't know, this crack startup founder, or like a really talented developer, or like a VC or whatever. Like it's the whole culture is around that.
Yeah,
so it's hard to compete.
that's true. I agree.
But then, so I know we're talking about in terms of the ecosystem, it's hard to compare. And another theme is that in terms of check sizes and the risk profile, it's very hard to compare so far as well. But from your perspective as founders building in the city, what can VCs or investors do for you, which maybe goes beyond the check size? Because a lot of times, if you can't compete on, say, one aspect of what you're offering, maybe you try and augment everything else. So as, say, the customers in this case for these VCs or these investors, what are you looking for from them that goes beyond the check size, maybe?
I think a large part of it comes from who they are as people. So I think any transaction you do with like a VC shouldn't feel like a transaction. It should feel like a relationship. These are people that are going to be talking to for the next couple of years, presumably. They're there to assist you. They're there to help you. And so you have to just like who they are as people. That's just fundamental. Beyond that, beyond the check size and valuation and all that, obviously like the person's network, who the LPs are, that's always important. Like if you know that, hey, if I sign with this guy, there's a good chance that, they can introduce me to XYZ person who could be a customer. Like obviously that plays a big role. So yeah, I mean, to any Canadian investor, it's always about like, who do you know? Who can you make an intro to? What's your experience? Yeah.
I think like early on, or like probably not early on, more now, it's more like we actually make the VC work for it in a way, because investors will always get led, in my opinion. So it's a hard fact, right? But can you believe they actually go the extra mile to make the intros for you? Will they introduce to people that could be potential customers? Like these are things that weigh in a lot on whatever decisions we make. But also, I think that strategic kind of capital in terms of like, if you're taking from angel investors that have a really paramount network, that is like high value, because you might not be able to get as much feedback, but you'll definitely get a wild network out of it. Where if you have something where you're actually stuck, they might be helping you out a lot more. And I think that's defined by like the decisions we made on who came onto the cap table early on as well.
That makes sense. And then based off of all these reasons that you've listed out, this question, previous question as well, which of these were like the top couple of reasons for which you guys are heading to SF for the next couple of months?
So wait, like why are we heading to SF?
Yeah, like is it based on one of these reasons, or is it something completely different?
It's a mix.
I mean, it's a mix of multiple things.
Yeah.
I think so. When you have a firm like Andreessen Horowitz that approaches you with the opportunity to join Speedrun as one of 50 companies in LA and San Francisco for 3 months, like it's hard to say no, right? I think it could be transformative both for the company but also like for us as people. Like I've been to SF for like 8 days, nothing, right? But living there, breathing the same air as other founders and like just the best in the world, I'm sure it's gonna have a good effect on who we are as people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like Anthony's dream of like having a mattress on the floor is like finally coming through the next month. But yeah, I think like it also makes a massive decision because predominantly through the program, like our engineering team will still be based in Toronto. In fact, Waterloo actually, not even like Toronto. So I think it really depends. For us as founders, I think it's important. It's necessary because to live in that environment, and I think it's a much higher pressure because you're around people that are potentially probably going the same direction or have the same thesis as you. We haven't seen that in Toronto, but I'm pretty sure we will get a sense of it in SF. So I think putting ourselves in that situation is also very, very important.
So this idea of maybe finding competition or a competitive landscape that sort of differs in SF maybe, to pull that up to a slightly bigger scale, every time I'm reading the news these days, especially out of the industry, and I'm reading headlines about, big tech companies, whether it's Meta or Microsoft and so on and so forth, essentially acquiring a lot of the promising startups. Sure. I'm always wondering, what is the end goal now with founders these days? Is it to be able to build to a scale where you can compete with them? Or is that just no longer a possibility in your head when you start and you want to, just get to a point where somebody wants to acquire you?
I think it's still a possibility to compete against those large companies. I think if you look historically, again, everyone thought that IBM was here to stay. Guess what? They were pretty much replaced by Apple and Microsoft to a certain extent. It's just history kind of rhymes sometimes, and obviously you have these FAANG companies are huge. We don't expect Meta to go bust or Google to go bust anytime soon. But you might be starting to see some cracks. I think if you look at Apple, for example, have you guys been impressed recently with any of the releases? I haven't been. Google now has competition from Perplexity. That's interesting.
TikTok is also very interesting.
Yeah, you have a lot of these sort of new companies that are popping up, and they're taking advantage of how slow and uninnovative these big companies tend to be at that big of a scale.
Yeah, it is David and Goliath at the
really
end
is,
of the day, yeah.
But then what's stopping a big company essentially coming over and taking over what you're doing, like what Meta's done with Scale AI, essentially?
I mean, I think a large part of it comes down to focus. A company can add your startup as a feature. I mean, we've seen it, I think, in Google I/O recently. It's all these memes of half of SF startups just got evaporated as a bullet point in their presentation. I don't really buy that, to be honest. I think any team that's focused on a single task is always going to be better than a team that's kind of spread thin between all these separate projects. So yeah, I mean, we're not particularly worried of any of these large companies trying their hand at this kind of stuff. Obviously, we're not dumb. One day we might wake up and see on Twitter hey, we just released this new thing. Sure, but I think focus is severely underrated.
I also think being as close to your customer as possible makes a massive difference. When a company is so big, can that really happen? I don't think so. So it really depends on the experience you're providing firsthand with the customer, and then how close you are into making sure that their end customers, for us in our case, are happy. So I think that's the philosophy.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's also talk about failure real quick.
Yeah.
So both of you guys have had projects and ventures that haven't worked out, and I'm sure you've both learned quite a lot from them. Given all that, what does failure look like to you now, and how do you distinguish that from learning within OpenSesame?
It's a lot of repetition, man. If you experiment enough, I think it'll go for you for sure. And it's also I think there was a YC kind of essay or someone who mentioned it, I forgot, where you just have to literally be a cockroach. You just don't die, right? Try to stay alive for as long as possible, and something will hit eventually. But I mean, I don't know. I think I've learned more from this company than the last one.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
we went through a lot of stuff in this company too.
Yeah.
So.
But again, this idea of failure, yeah, maybe it didn't work out. So what? You probably learn a bunch, and you're probably gonna apply those learnings to the next thing. So I don't know. Do I see it as failure? Not really.
I think that's interesting, but when you were talking about being a cockroach, because somebody we were talking to recently also mentioned this idea of every time he's faced with a no, it's I'm 20 no's away from a yes in my head, and all of a sudden those 20 no's are completely worth it. If that yes is going to get me like $1 million in funding, sure, why not? So when you're thinking with something like that in mind, and your failures essentially are just smaller roadblocks, and I think coming from a business background, to me this seems more like a ideology that's imbued throughout the tech industry and the way people build within tech. How do you know when to pivot, or when something is enough of a roadblock that you have to change direction, and it's not just about how many times you keep going at the same problem?
It fundamentally comes back to the customer.
Yeah.
Always. I mean, that's guided most of our pivots. From like pivot, not pivots, but yeah. I think that really guided on what was actually valuable to the end user, or like the person we're selling to. And then also, like Anthony said, like, did we enjoy selling to those people for a period of time? Were the ACVs that you're selling at, did it make sense? Was it practical enough for the company to keep going for a period of time? Because I also feel like there was kind of a segue when we started building Cell, where we got pulled into one part of the industry, which was actually e-commerce. So there was a lot of traction that happened early. We were getting like, deposits. There were like people who were paying for the pilots early on and saying like, hey, let's try the product here. But fundamentally, we saw like a gap to where the product would grow. So literally all we did was just refund the deposits and move to another direction. Because literally that's not where we saw the company going, and then also where the customer base would grow eventually. So it didn't make sense.
And did you have any like framework for making that decision?
I think it went back to like what we thought the company could be in the future, and what steps do we have to take to get there. The math for e-commerce just didn't really make sense with the number of people that could pay for the product, how much they could pay for it. It just, it's much easier to sell your product at large contract values than like smaller ones, right? If your goal is like, okay, well, my next goal is to raise, I don't know, a seed round. To raise your seed round, you need to get like 100K in revenue. Okay, well, let's work backwards from that. Like, how many customers do you need to get that to 100K? Like, if you're selling your product for $20 a month, like, you're gonna need a lot of customers. So would you rather do that, or would you rather get like, I don't know, 3 or 4 paying customers that actually pay like a decent chunk?
But I also think there's like a split between that, right? Because if you're like a consumer company, it's like your metrics are not even the same, like focus wise. Because it's not the revenue, it's like, how much usage are you getting on a daily basis, or like what's your attention metrics on your like daily basis on the product. So consumer is like a different ballgame. Respect to people who are doing that, but I think B2B for us is just more comfortable, because I actually like sitting down and actually figuring out like the complexity of the problems within these businesses or these legacy kind of infrastructure systems. So yeah, we enjoy that.
I think it's also because you saying B2C is a whole different animal, probably because like it's the amount of noise versus the signal, that it's a lot more of like, you have to really thin out what actually makes sense for your business and what doesn't, right? But then on the other flip side of this, in terms of how you fail, there's a lot of this like ideology in the community about how you need to fail fast as a startup, right? So you make your mistakes early on. Do you buy into that, or do you think there's value in taking your time getting to the next thing that doesn't work, so that then you can build something that does work?
Speed is everything. Like absolutely everything. Beyond startups, like, every great conqueror historically has been fast. Like, that's why they're good. Napoleon was great because he was fast. Alexander the Great, same thing. Like, they were quick, right? They could surprise their opponents. You could surprise your competition. You can outwork them. Speed is everything. So if you want to take your time, if you want to, work your 9 to 5, if you want to take your weekends off, like, be my guest, you're going to lose to people who are going to work 24/7. So yeah, absolutely, like, try to figure out what's not working as quick as possible and resolve those issues. Iterate quickly. Like, within a week, we could change a large part of the product, like, in a matter of days. Right? We're not attached to our ideas. We know what works. We know what might need improvements. So yeah, just iterate super quickly. Eventually, you'll figure something out.
Funny enough, like Anthony has this like strategy where we have like a company Notion doc where there's like a bunch of documents or like guidelines for like go-to-market or marketing or content, etc. There's this page which we have, it's like very hard because you have to keep your like exercising this muscle every day, which is called daily ideas. And I've missed like a day or two of them, so I have to get back. But basically, it's like you put an idea down and you have to force yourself to think of an idea, even if it's a bad idea. You just put the idea down, and then at the end of the week, we have like a product call, which just like reviews all the ideas and we kind of see if it fits within like the 6 criteria that I mentioned earlier, and also if it's like worth it to implement right now or later. So like that's a good kind of strategy where you're kind of forced to think, and then you have the things which like, oh, okay, this is not going to work. Throw that idea out of the box. Just like go into another one and try to think again.
Yeah. So you got to exercise that idea muscle. Like if you're expecting, your like an idea to just come to you magically, like sometimes, sure. But you know that if you train your brain to figure out ideas like every single day, even if they're bad ideas, like I don't care. Eventually, you'll get really, really good at finding different solutions to problems that you might be facing.
That makes sense. And then when you're moving at this speed, you're bound to make mistakes at one point or the other, right? Which is where this idea of iterating comes from. But there's always that small chance that you might make a mistake that is too large. It's too hard to come back from. Have you ever come to a point where you've made a mistake at this level? And what did it like teach you about yourself, the company, the product?
I don't know, mistakes in like kind of saying like in that way.
I have one in mind.
Which one?
So earlier on, I think this was probably December. We had decided that we wanted Cell to be able to interact with a bunch of different tools and integrations, because we thought it was cool, right? Like the whole thought of like, hey, imagine you can connect all of your tools together and just talk to all of them. It's magical. It's a great experience. Turns out, like, we're kind of building for ourselves there. Our customers never asked for that, and on the contrary, they didn't really want us to connect to other tools because you'd be getting away from their own product. So that's not great. So that took a lot of the time, and just like so much time wasted figuring out those integrations and all of that. Just such a time suck, and it taught us a lot about who we are as people, and like what our impulses are and how we could remedy those things. That's why I have like the criteria now, so we don't fall into those
drops.
Those drops again.
That was like a very hard phase, I think. From this, I also think like from after Next, Anthony moved back to Montreal for a bit, and like as co-founders, you're not in the same city. Like we can't work remote. I don't know. The philosophy of it is like you have to work in person. You can work remote. Let's say we're like sick or you take a day off, or you're inside your house for that day. You're communicating. You're in the same city, whatever. But when it's 2 or 3 months flat, it gets really heavy.
Yeah.
Like your brain stops to kind of like flow with whatever ideas you're speaking about, whatever kind of phase you're speaking about. So one thing I learned is like, okay, we don't work well when we're not around the same area or we're not close by. That was a big issue. But also I think we kept going ahead of ourselves in terms of like what the product could be before like testing the thesis with like a small number of people and then moving on. That was the hard part. And I think fundamentally that did waste a lot of time. I think that burned like a month of runway, which was quite frustrating.
So when it's about catching issues like this or seeing that maybe you're a bit too ingrained on one idea that might not pan out, right? I'm curious about this because, and this is a question unique to you guys as opposed to any of our previous guests, is in terms of a collaborative relationship like this, what is maybe a quality or a practice you've noticed in your co-founder that you value and you think is crucial to the way you're building?
I mean, one thing I like about both of us is that we're like no bullshit people. Okay. In the realm of like, if there's something wrong, I'll tell him to his face, and the same thing with him, he'll tell me. Where it's like, I'm not like, oh, okay, this looks cool, let's try it, or something. If I don't think it makes sense, I'm going to say it off the bat. And I like the direct approach. It's much better because it saves you a lot of time. But I also think that like I'm more empathetic than Anthony is, which is a good mix. He's very logical. Like for me, I take more time if something very difficult has happened to like come back to like my state of flow for him, it's like, okay, I can just like move on and start, building again.
Yeah.
So I think that mix is good.
Yeah, I think if your team is too analytical, you lose touch of like, hey, you're actually interacting with the other people here. Like your customers are human beings, and so. But then if you're too emotional, then it's like, well, there's actually like data that's important here, and you have to think about that. So you need to mix. Yeah, and I guess that's why we kind of work pretty well together. Like we have that balance of, I know what my strengths are, Jay knows what his strengths are, and we're able to delegate those tasks pretty effectively.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's more or less like you have to like go big or go home.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that typical like, oh, it's an SF mentality or something. But like, I think it's, you really want to build a generational company, and I think like we have the capability to do it. So why not give it everything to try to make that happen? But also, I think like it's about, I wouldn't say stress or managing your stress. I think it's like managing how each decision in the company affects like the opposite person. That's something you have to look like very deeply into. Like very, not early on, but I think around like earlier this year we lost like one of our employees, and that hit hard. Like that was a very difficult phase of the company, because obviously a lot of the development, a lot of like the integrations, everything was like kind of happening at the same time. We had customers that were trying to come in at that moment, so it was like, oh shit, where do we go? Like, we have to like resurface, get back to normal. So I think at that point you learn a lot about each other, and also how to handle different situations where it's like, no, you still have your idea, you still have your kind of, your vision for the company. That doesn't steer away. No matter who's around, who's not there, it's just like you both are next to each other, that just, it moves forward.
Yeah.
So that is like a mentality you have to like kind of set in stone early.
You say you want to build this generational company, and based off of your manifesto and what you're building, I'd say that you're essentially betting on this language user interface as being the next big thing, right? But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what comes after LUIs. Like, what's the interface paradigm in 10, 20 years?
I mean, I think that
BCIs.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That's I think the obvious answer. Where right now you're interacting with the language user interface using either your voice or you're typing your request. Eventually, let's say you have a neural link implanted into your brain, you might like think and it does it for you. Yeah. So that's kind of that sci-fi future. There's probably also like a more short-term interesting scenario where maybe a lot of the work is going to be done through AI agents, and that's a real possibility. But yeah, I think at least for the medium to long term, we will have the language user interface with us for a pretty long time. Who knows? Maybe holograms are next.
But then when you're, I guess, switching over to all these different modalities, right? Even with just language for now, there's so much that needs to be happening at a technical level just to make it feel intuitive, to have that responsiveness that you get when you just click a button, right? How do you think that's going to evolve when you move away from language as a modality onto something like video, gesture, BCIs, brain-computer interfaces for anybody?
I mean, my guess is that BCIs are going to make things a lot less ambiguous. That's my guess, Alice. Because it's like, oh, well, you're able to understand what people are really thinking about without the barrier of language. So that's interesting. But yeah, it's a bunch of like technical challenges of like, hey, what does the customer actually mean when they say this? What are they actually talking about here? Is there any context we can take or historical precedent that we can take from their previous conversations that can help us like answer this question? So all these things, they pile up over time, and I think that's why like, I don't know, like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, people were making fun of all these like GPT wrappers as like pretty shallow products, but like over time they get better and better because you're implementing a lot of in-house tech, and look at companies like Cursor. Sure, maybe it initially started off as a GPT wrapper, but they have so many internal models now. It's super refined. It takes time.
And then when we're talking about technology, again, that makes it easier and easier for I guess, the users to interact with it and to get the best out of it. And whether this goes back to the idea of you want your users to be able to move on to more value adding tasks, right? Not get, tied up in the mundane. Do you think there's any potential downside to that progress as well, where either there are certain functions of our day-to-day work that, we become lazy in or we become less attentive towards? Do you see any pushback coming from, I guess, the industry at large or by users in general?
I don't think so. I almost get the feeling that humans are lazy by default. Or yeah, like they nobody wants to label a whole list of like, I don't know, like an Excel spreadsheet. Like it's super boring for everyone, right? You would rather do something more productive with your time. One of the huge issues I find with the current job market is that, people hate their work. You're doing a job for like 40 years of your life and you hate what you're doing. Like, what do you mean? That's 40 years of your life. Would you not feel like it's like a blessing to remove all those mundane tasks and replace them with like mentally stimulating, opportunities? Like, yeah, that's amazing.
I think for me personally, in terms of the idea or the policy side of where things go from here on, is I feel like we might not be considering enough of the drawbacks of the impacts on the job market in general, in terms of how many people are employed and what work they're doing, in terms of, what's bringing in money to households. Because a lot of jobs that might get cut down by a lot of maybe the automation side might not be as high value add today, but they're bringing food to somebody's household. And I think an important part of what we might be overlooking is to create opportunities on the flip side of that, because these people are not going away. Like, they still exist here, so we need to be able to get the best out of them elsewhere as well. But I think it's just a general conversation that might get overlooked at times. And
I would just find it hard to believe that from like one day to the other, like your job is gone. I think it's a lot more fluid. I think your job will morph over time into something different. You're not going to lose your job. You're gonna, I don't know, your job is slightly going to change. So yeah, like I don't buy into the whole like doom and gloom of like, oh, I'm gonna lose my job. Like, no, your job is just gonna change.
I don't believe that either at all. I think like it just depends on, I think when your kind of way of work changes, maybe it would morph the way you're doing tasks on a daily basis, the way your job is kind of situated around, different things on a day-to-day basis. But I feel like, especially for what we're building, we never go to a customer like, hey, we can just like cut and like, move kind of your tasks of employees or whatever you're doing. Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to make their employees more productive. So if that's the way you position it, I think for them also it's an added benefit, because they don't have to focus time taking, their 8 hours a day on something completely different. They can actually focus on what matters to moving the company or the company's North Star forward.
And I think it kind of forces people, or at least people who've been in the job market for a long time, to kind of think twice about whether or not they need to still be upskilling or changing the way they do things, or questioning or challenging their own assumptions. And I think that's a good part that comes out of, I guess, friction like this, starting from the bottom up, is that you kind of have to rethink things you just took for granted beforehand. It's like, oh, maybe I need to push myself a bit more here, where I've been taking it a bit easy for the past few years, So I think that mindset shift is probably good at a larger scale.
My hunch is that we're transitioning away from this whole like idea of you have to be well-rounded. I remember my dad telling me when I was younger, hey, like, you have to be well-rounded, you have to be good at everything. It's like, maybe that was true years ago. Now, I think Harley was the one that mentioned it. But like, it's much more advantageous to you to be like a spiky individual, be like really, really good, like world-class good at maybe one or two things, and somebody's gonna want to hire you. Because and just like, and be spiky in the things that you really, really enjoy doing, right? If I don't know, let's say you love fluid dynamics, right? Just do that. Like, don't think about anything else. Just do fluid dynamics 24/7. You're bound to be like one of the best in the world, like a leader, whatever. somebody's gonna hire you because nobody wants a generalist.
Yep.
Like ChatGPT is a generalist. It's great at everything. It's not world class at anything, but it's great. So are you better than ChatGPT or are you not? That's how I think about it, at least.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, I think.
Yeah, I think the value for expertise is going to keep going up. Okay, so now this brings us to a segment that we like to do with all of our guests, and this is to get to know you guys a bit more on the personal side. So we incorrectly named these rapid fire questions, which I like to point out every time, but they're not rapid fire. Feel free to think about them. I'll edit around it. It'll look like you thought of that in a snap second. So
Coffee with garden thing, bro.
it is sort of like that, but no hamper at the end.
Okay, no hamper at the end, nice.
Okay, I'll fire us off here with, what is your go-to comfort meal at the end of a long work day?
Have options, bro. Like, are you talking about, like, can I say, like, home cooked or is it, like,
Say
outdoor?
whatever comforts you.
Right? Honestly, like, there's a Vietnamese spot in Ossington called Pho Tien Tang. And, bro, barbecue chicken on rice, that is, for me, like, comfort.
Chicken and rice.
Yeah, that is comfort for me.
Jim Bro came out.
Yeah, that's comfort. That's just super comfort, yeah.
Oh, was that pizza from like north of Brooklyn?
Yeah,
Oh,
you know,
North of
like,
Brooklyn is great.
I went to New York last week and the industry was much better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just gonna...
It doesn't compare, but within this
we take what we
domain,
got, yeah.
North of Brooklyn's great.
North
Yeah.
of Brooklyn's great, yeah.
Would you rather spend a day at a cabin in the woods coding by yourself, or hosting a 5K run through the woods?
5K run through the woods. Like, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah, I'm in the cabin. I'm good.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Oh, you're coding by yourself?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, what is the most random thing either of you have built for fun?
Good thing. Oh, a tarot card reader.
What?
Yeah, that was my principle of software design kind of course thing, and that was kind of understanding. I wanted to understand how they worked, or like the philosophy behind like how a card is picked. It's very like by chance, but I was very curious to see like how someone would pick one on a computer. So basically, built this algorithm where you had like a bunch of like tarot cards that were just like back and forth. People would enter some information about their date of birth, like their likes, dislikes, and then I would just like match a card and put it in the screen. So yeah, that was like the most random thing that I built.
Was this CC207?
Yeah,
There's no way.
What?
It was.
Wow. We built a dating app.
No way. That's funny. Yeah, it was 207.
Oh.
Oof. I have two. I was supposed to build like the McGill dating app. That didn't pan out.
Dude, that would have been sick. I think so. That would have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been cool, but that would have taken so much time. I built this app called the UPick, which essentially the whole premise was like, hey, you're with your friends. Your friend is asking you like, hey, like, where do you want to go? It's like, oh, I don't know, UPicks. Oh, there you go, it's the app. And basically, like, you would fill out some criteria, and it would like generate like the most optimal suggestions of like places to go in. Yeah, I feel like everyone has like the same idea when they're young, and nobody's been actually able to make money off of it. But yeah,
I honestly, like, you built an app, even I built an app in high school where like, this is because I'm from Dubai. I'm born and brought up in Dubai, so like we had a British curriculum, so it was at GCSE, and you had a lot of like past papers
IB.
that you do. IB past papers, like a lot. And the issue with like what happened closer to exams was the past paper sites used to crash. So what we did was like legit growth hacked it, where we just like downloaded all the past paper files on Google Drive, and then had like an embedded component that just sat in like a mobile app where you could just like search through different past papers and then save them to do them on your phone. But yeah, that was like the first like thing I built.
It's pretty cool. I remember using one of those apps.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
feeling frustrated when the website just went down like the week before the exam. Anyways, if you guys could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, one-on-one, who would it be?
I have like thoughts here. You want to go first? I'm pretty sure you have an answer.
oh, I do. Yeah. Oof. I mean, it's so typical, but like I'd have to have dinner with like Steve Jobs. It's yeah. I mean, that's the obvious one, and the less obvious one is probably like Edwin Land. He's yeah. Oh, no reaction from you guys. Okay.
I don't think I got that name correct. Who is that?
He's the inspiration for a lot of what Steve Jobs, the showmanship part of it. He was the first one to do a lot of these, what are they called? Like sunglasses to a certain extent. Even digital cameras, like just be able to like take pictures and then it gets printed out.
Oh, right.
So like a lot of those early innovations just came from him. And low-key, like no, not a lot of people know about him, but like
That's
he's
cool.
yeah.
It's a great answer.
I would do Johnny Ive.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
for sure. I think like where his mind is at, especially where Apple was within like iOS 7, that was the major redesign. Like even parts of the iPhone 4 or 4S, that was like particularly interesting in terms of like where innovation was happening at the time in terms of design. So that would be very interesting. On the fun side, I would do Jake for sure. I just want to understand the journey of like starting from like absolutely nothing and like reaching like so high up the chain where you're basically untouchable. So I would take two of those options.
Okay. Interesting.
Great answer.
What is your guilty pleasure tech gadget that you just can't live without, but you really should be able to?
I don't even know if it's like live without, because I have a PS5 at home but I just don't use it because of work.
Literally us.
Like I just don't use it.
I play on it. I use it. I want it to be known.
Like I love F1, so as much as I can get into that phase of like, you know, playing F1 25 or just
Yeah.
like watching F1 in general.
Do you have the whole setup with the pedals?
I don't.
Yeah, well then you're
Yeah,
not gonna
you
enjoy
get
it, are you? Yeah.
But I think like that is like a guilty pleasure. Like if I'm like, it happens every once in 2 months where I'm like, I just need to get on it and play for at least like 2 hours for my mind to just like lock in. But yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
I don't have like another tech item, I think.
I can't think of much. Like, it's I have an iPad Pro. It's used for a lot of things. I tend to not use that as much these days. But sometimes I just have like, you know, you just get like a spark of, yeah, I got a good idea, let's say that. We'll just like sketch it out pretty quickly. Just pull it out. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have any. Yeah.
Interesting.
No, that's completely fair. On a similar note then, what's one app or tool that you think is totally underrated that more people should be using? I make this mistake every time.
App or tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, app or tool.
Belly. I started using it and I love it. I actually love it. Like I was in New York, literally like 4 or 5 days ago, and I loved it. Like finding places with like, other than like TikTok, when you search for something, I feel like actually seeing the reviews or the ratings or like what dishes to order. Like I like the community aspect where that you're trying to like Tinder swipe on like what meals are the best ones, but I really like that experience. I think Bellies are underrated product.
What did you enjoy the most in New York? What's your recommendation?
Food wise,
Yeah.
Sema was a place that like I just luckily, like my girlfriend and I got a Sema. It was raining really heavily, someone canceled a reservation, walked in, it's like South Indian.
Oh,
like
okay.
I didn't even know it was a Michelin star at a restaurant, but yeah, it was really, really good. Not too expensive. And then Lindashi for pizza. That was crazy. Yeah.
For me, like I have this app called 11 Reader. It's from 11 Labs. Essentially, the whole idea is just like I can put in any website or any like long form like just book, and using AI just reads for me. So pretty practical. I don't know. Besides that, I guess Perplexity's been actually very useful.
Yeah.
I love Perplexity.
But would it be underrated? I don't think so.
Well, not a lot of people are using it. Like
Yeah, that's
like
true.
outside of the tech bubble.
That's true. That's
like
that's true. Yeah, but I use it. I don't use Google anymore.
yeah.
I use Perplexity. Yeah. So
Yeah, one of our previous guests' answer to this was similar. They mentioned something called Whisperflow,
Yeah.
where you just like speak and
Yeah,
AI
yeah.
transcribes for usage.
That's cool.
Opposite end of the spectrum.
That's cool.
Okay, if you could instantly master any skill overnight, what would it be?
It's hard, man.
Master any skill.
Yeah. Would you like take a kind of guilty move at it, or like would it be like company related?
Like what?
Like would you like keep it as like, okay, I want something for myself, or would it be just like company related? Because it can be something that's not useful to your life.
Me and the company are one thing. There's
Whatever.
it's one entity.
Yeah.
I don't know. You go. What is this silly shit? Like some like, oh, I want to be the fastest runner.
No. I'll say no. I don't think so. I don't know. It's a very hard question. Honestly, I think like speaking as many languages as I could. That would be a great skill to have. Because I feel like no matter where you go in the world, you can always make a business deal. So if by chance I knew every single language, that would help us grow very, very quickly.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Yeah.
I guess on mine it's also like just master storytelling. I think storytelling is literally everything, especially in AI. Like, there's so much noise out there. Everyone's doing cool stuff. Like, how do you differ from all the others? And I guess like storytelling's one of the best ways to do so.
Maybe you can ask Steve Jobs.
Yeah, there you go. It's all connected.
It's all connected. If you guys could go back and give advice to yourselves when you were just starting out your tech career, what would you say?
Don't listen to VCs early. That was my genuine advice. Like, I think like when I started my first company, like, don't take exactly what they're saying at face value. Not that it's not valuable. I'm gonna get flamed if some people see this, but I think it's just like, don't take everything at face value. I think you learn a lot more from talking to your customers than talking to VCs.
Yeah. For me, it just don't be good at everything. Just be good at a couple of things and just focus on that. Back to focus. I think school teaches you to be good at a lot of things, which understandable. Like, that should probably be their mandate, but you know, for the average developer that goes out of university, if you're not like from like Waterloo, you probably have like 2 internships under your belt. You're okay at anything. Like you're just average. What's the point? Right? You're average, and then fundamentally you probably don't like what you're doing anyways. Like, I have a hard time with the whole concept of like being a full stack developer, for example. Like, I think being a very, very good front end developer like is fundamentally like that person is very different than a very, very talented back end developer. The way you think is just has to be very different. And so I don't know, just being focused is huge.
I think schools should come with the caveat that this curriculum or program is designed because we can't pick on each of you and train you for every specific thing. Yeah. But keep in mind that you can still decide what it is, the one thing you want to do. So,
correct.
Okay, if your life was a movie, what would it be titled?
This is so good. Like, this is a hard question, man. I don't know, How to Train Your Dragon or something. Okay. Yo.
Oh God. Oh, I know. The Internship.
Yo, that is like that is good.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, the one where
they go to Google.
Vince Vaughn.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Yeah, probably.
Top tier.
Yeah.
Good choice. Okay.
Final question.
Yeah.
Probably the most important, hardest question in the rapid fire questions. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Oh, okay. Good.
100%.
Yeah. Approved.
Okay, and with that, we're coming to the conclusion of this episode. Thank you guys for coming on. Before we head off, do you guys have any advice, words of wisdom for anybody listening?
One last truth bomb.
Truth bomb. Read a lot. Read biographies specifically. They're an absolute cheat code. The fact that you can pick up the life of some of the most influential people to ever live for like $20 and read it as many times as possible, like, insane value. Like, genuinely, if they're like autobiographies, oh my God. Like, you almost have like this master of business or innovation or whatever, like, talking to you in their own words. Why did you not take advantage of that?
For me, it's the opposite. Where it's not like don't read at all, but it's like, for me, it's like talk to as many people or get in front of as many people as possible. That's what helped me very early, where in the beginning you do get very scared. It's very nerve-wracking when you walk up to someone that you don't know and try to say hi or explain what you're doing, because at the end of the day, that person doesn't really care about you, which is fundamentally the start of like any cold kind of intro, where I think I learned a lot by putting myself in like hard situations earlier, where I think building in public is great. That fundamentally will give you a lot of kind of insight into like what people are thinking, how you can reach more people in general, posting about what you're building, talking about what you're building, sharing what you're doing with other people. That has helped me a lot, especially with like confidence when it comes to talking to people for the first time. That was always some like advice I give people. So I think that's very important.
That's great. Thank you guys for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you guys.